Okay, I'm just gonna throw out a scenario for you, all right? This could totally happen in the story too, all right? And Oda likes his like innuendos and things, so this could work out great. Next time Zoro sees Tashigi, right? Which is going to happen. Like, I don't think the rest of the story is going to conclude without Zoro and Tashigi at least having a single scene together. Next time they're together, I want to have a moment where Zoro takes out Enma and is like, hey, Tashigi, check out this really cool purple sword I got from Wano. And Tashigi would be like, wow, Zoro, look at that sword. It's incredible. Wow, look at the hockey off of that thing. Yeah, a beautiful princess of the country gave me this sword. And then we will wait to see Tashigi's reaction to that. And then we will know where this all stands. Okay, so a couple of days ago, I made a video and I was just like offhandedly, I kind of mentioned that like, wow, you know, there's a lot of women in Zoro's life if you really stop to think about it, you know? Like, not very many, but, you know, there's a few. And Zoro seems to not be interested in really any romantic angles of this, but, you know, it's interesting to look at this. Like, I don't know. Oda said that he's not gonna romance the Straw Hats, right? So, like, you're never going to see Sanji and Nami together, or, you know, Frankie and Robin together, which would be, you know, my preference. But at any rate, we're just not romancing the Straw Hats here, right? I could totally see Oda doing an epilogue type situation where the story ends for the Straw Hats as they are right now. They find the One Piece. There's a big epic war. Stuff happens. Frankie turns into a giant robot. I don't know. I could totally see Zoro and, like, Hiyori just, like, they're together. Like, Zoro's in Wano several decades from now with Hiyori, and the implication is they're a couple. You know, kind of the same thing that happens with Rayleigh, where, you know, Rayleigh was on Roger's crew, he was the first mate, and now in his retired years, he's married to Shakky. And there's actually some comparisons we can make with that, because, you know, Rayleigh's second in command of the Roger Pirates. Zoro, I mean, technically speaking, he's not really the first mate, but he's the first mate. Second in command of the Straw Hat Pirates, right? You have a comparison there. They're both swordsmen and everything like that. They both have scars. They're both really badass and everything. And Rayleigh ended up getting with not necessarily a princess. Shakky was an empress. She was a queen. We all know Shakky was a queen. And Hiyori is also like the princess of Wano. You could kind of look at it like that. Once again, they don't really use the exact same terms. They kind of do, because there's not really a king of Wano. There's a shogun, you know, so that's how it goes. But, you know, you could see that. You could see that. So just, you know, bookmark that, put that away, and we can see that in, like, I don't know, at the end of the story, Zoro's with Hiyori, and they're overlooking Wano together, and Zoro's in his old age, and, you know, they both are, and they're like a happy, retired, married couple or something. Yeah, sure, why not, right? But, you know, we're going to talk about Hiyori a little bit, of course, but there's some other women as well. Let's go through here. So, we also have Tashigi. Tashigi is, like, obvious. As soon as Zoro met Tashigi for the first time in Log Town, it was a little weird. He really freaked out just because, like, Kuina and Tashigi look remarkably similar, and that was his childhood friend, and then, like, it seems like he was, like, seeing a ghost of her, honestly. He's gotten better with that, because later on when Zoro meets Tashigi during Punk Hazard and they fight Monet together, there are some cute scenes between them where, like, you know, at one point, you know, he protects her and then has to, like, pick her up at one point and, like, walk her around, and that's, like, kind of like, oh, okay, that's kind of adorable. But he was a lot better. He wasn't, like, freaking out as much as he did at Logtown when they first met or anything like that, right? They really haven't interacted since, but, you know, that'll happen at some point. We also have Perona. Now, granted, this is a little bit more of, like, anime-only stuff, because when Zoro gets sent flying by Kuma to Mihawk's Island, Kuragana Island, and they have a scene in the anime where Perona finds him, takes him back to the castle, and patches him up and, wraps all the bandages around him, and then he wakes up and he has no idea where he's at, and he starts running around the castle, and then eventually Perona uses the negative hollow on him and then wraps him up even in more bandages to make Zoro look like Kumashi. So there's like a lot of like filler stuff with this, but it also throws it out there too. And also, like, it was Perona and Zoro. They traveled to Sabaody together, right? And it was interesting because, like, Perona didn't need to do that. I mean, she did because Zoro has no sense of direction. Zoro would have never gotten to that island if it wasn't for Perona. But still, Perona was like, okay, Zoro, I'll take you to Sabaody. I'll make sure you get there okay and on track. And then afterwards, she actually circled back to Thriller Bark to get the actual Kumashi body and then went back to Kuraigana Island, where she then helped Mihawk till the fields with the human drills. Yeah, so that was that there. But hey, I don't know, Perona, there's something there, maybe, okay, yeah. There's some other people, too, along the ways. I've seen some people ship Zoro with Okiku. There was the scene when Okiku and the rest of the Scabbards were up on top of the roof fighting against Kaido, and her arm fell down, and that was the moment for Zoro to realize we can't be screwing around anymore. We gotta get moving, right? Like, that was the impetus. You could just say because, they met Okiku earlier at the beginning of the arc, Zoro and Luffy did at, like, Bakura Town and everything like that with the sumo wrestler, and so, he was a little bit more closer to Okiku than all the other rest of the Scabbards that he didn't really know as much, and so when he saw Okiku's arm, he was like, okay, and I think that was the moment, if I'm remembering this correctly, that was the moment where he, like, slashed a poo to get the vial back and give to Chopper and be like, yeah, it's on now, all right? I can't be screwing around down here anymore. I need to get up there. I need to go help them, right? And that was kind of the thing, and then eventually Zoro, Luffy, Killer, Law, and Kid, and everybody gets up on the roof, and they start fighting Kaido, right? So there's something, I suppose. Yeah, let's go through these, like, I guess, chronologically, I suppose. Let's start with Tashigi, all right? So we've learned a little bit more about Zoro's family tree. Oda revealed a lot of it in an SBS. We know about Zoro's parents. We know about his relationship to the Shimosuke family through Shimosuke Furiko, who was the sister of Shimosuke Ushimaru, who was the Mr. So-and-so. He was the samurai that was imprisoned in the cave with Yamato, that, the daimyos of the Kibi, the Udon, and the Ringo region that sacrificed themselves so Yamato could get out of the cave, right? Okay, so that is Zoro's great uncle, is Shimosuke Ushimaru. Zoro's grandmother is Shimosuke Furiko. She ended up going to the East Blue with a bunch of, like, refugees from Wano that left, and she met a man named Pinzoro. Roronoa Pinzoro, all right? That is Zoro's grandpappy, all right? Then they had a child, Roronoa Arashi, and he got married to the daughter of some mountain bandits named Terra, and then that is Zoro's mom and dad, and then we have Zoro. Okay, so then moving over to Kozaboro's family, who was another refugee that left Wano and went to the east. Same thing. We have Kozaboro Shimosuke, same family name as Furiko, because they are both descended from Shimosuke Ryuma. Ryuma lived hundreds of years ago. We do not know exactly how far back that Ryuma lived, but the Shimosuke family continues on, and they named the village Shimosuke Village. So we're not really sure, basically, what this all comes down to, what the relationship would be between Zoro and Kozaburo. They're related, but they could be related from, like, that's the branch family, this is the main family, or vice versa, and it could be, like, a long time ago, all right? So Kozaburo meets somebody, gets married, has a child, that's Koshiro. Koshiro meets somebody, has a child, and that's Kuina. Okay? We do not know the relationship between Zoro and Kuina. If Ushimaru was like the brother of Kozaburo, which could actually be the case. I had to go back through the timelines and all this. Ushimaru was born 70 years ago. Kozaburo was born 81 years ago, which is like a decade of difference, but, you know, it's possible they could have been brothers, anything. So if they were all siblings, like Furiko, Ushimaru, and Kozaburo, if they were all siblings, then Kuina would be Zoro's, like, second or third cousin. Something like that, okay? Now, I bring all this up because obviously Tashigi looks a lot like Kuina. But we do not know the situation there either. We don't know the whole thing of how that went down. It's clearly not a case where I don't think Oda's going to reveal that, like, oh, by the way, Tashigi and Kuina were twin sisters that were separated at birth. One of them is older than the other, so they weren't, like, born at the same time. I can't remember which. I think Kuina's, like, slightly older than Tashigi, so that wouldn't have worked. But clearly, Tashigi is also going to be revealed as part of the Shimosuke family. But it's kind of a situation where it could be like such a distant relation depending on the branch families and everything like that. Same family name that stretches back like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, okay? So that's the situation with Tashigi. We're probably going to learn more about her, even if it's like, well, Oda revealed Zoro's family tree in an SBS, so I could probably see it the same deal with Tashigi, if anything. Like, maybe at some point we'll get a backstory with Tashigi that'll be very brief. Because the idea is, we had the people leaving Wano, settling at Shimosuke, but they didn't all settle at Shimosuke Village in the east. Some of them went to other areas of the east and settled there. Dollars to Donuts, that was the family that would eventually have Tashigi, okay? It's just that, and she also has blue hair, and so the whole idea is, you know, Ushimaru had blue hair, and Ryuma had blue hair. The green hair apparently comes from, like, Pinzoro and Arashi, like the Roanoa family line, okay, and that's where that comes from. But Zoro looks a lot like Ushimaru, who looks a lot like Ryuma, so that's like one branch of that family, okay? So yeah, and also I think enough people have probably asked Oda already, like, what's the deal with Tashigi and Kuina? What's the deal with Tashigi and Zoro? What's the relation? Is the family tree? How does this work? I'm sure Oda eventually, when he gets to the point where it's like, this is relevant, if it ever is, he'll just like, yeah, here it is in the SBS or in a data book or whatever. That's how it goes, right? Okay, so I guess we'll see, all right? I guess we will see. So then, beyond Tashigi, we also have Hiyori. Hiyori is the one, I would say, out of everybody, Hiyori is the one that is like firing the road flares of, like, romance in Zoro's face. He just does not give a shit. Either that or he's, like, the most oblivious dude ever. Hey, remember the scene back at Thriller Bark when Zoro, Luffy, and Sanji were all unconscious because they got their shadows ripped out of them, and they had to wake them back up, and they, like, tried everything, but nothing worked, and then Usopp was the one that came up with the idea, hey, everybody, there's a beautiful swords master woman that's carrying meat everywhere. And then because, you know, sword, meat, woman, that, like, made them all wake up at the same time. And so with Zoro, it was like, wait, swords, huh? Beautiful sword master, where? I don't even care if they're beautiful. There's sword masters, I'll fight them. Where are they? You know, like, okay. So that's the idea for Zoro, right? And this is exemplified. Look, there's a lot of, like, nice scenes with Hiyori, Komurasaki, and Zoro during Wano. The moment where they're asleep in that little cottage in Ringo, and they wake up, and I think there was a moment where Hiyori was like, oh, did you enjoy sleeping next to me? And Zoro was like, kind of was like, well, I mean, he, like, gets, like, a little bit, like, he doesn't answer directly, and Hiyori's like, oh, you did, didn't you? And he's like, hey, and just like, okay, that's nice, right? So there's I mean, okay, Hiyori was absolutely smitten with Zoro. We're all on the same page with that, right? Like, Zoro's feelings for Hiyori, that's different, but Hiyori, 100% has feelings for Zoro. I think that is already, like, set in stone, maybe. I think, yeah. Now, they added an extra scene. Oh, by the way, also the scene like at the district at Rasetsu Town when Yasu gets killed, and then you have Hiyori there that's like literally begging Zoro to help and telling him the story about Orochi and the smiles and why like Otoko and Yasu are afflicted with all of that. Like Otoku ate a smile and then Yasu didn't want to make her, feel sad, so he ate a smile as well so they could both endure, right? Like that was the whole idea there. So, yeah, she's like pleading with Zoro to help and gives him the Enma, just like, go and take this, my father's blade Enma, and go and, take Kaido and Orochi's head. Please go and take care of this, right? So there's that scene, which is very emotional, but in the anime, before Wano ends, they add a really nice scene where Zoro is not at the grave of Ryuma, which is like unfortunate because that was also established, but whatever. A scene where Zoro is at the graves of Yasu and Pedro. Zoro never even met Pedro. Well, I guess he did at Zou very briefly, but he wasn't there for all the shining moments of Pedro's character. Remember that time Pedro pulled out some dynamite and blew up right in front of Tamago? Then remember that other scene where he pulled out even bigger dynamite? I guess Pedro just had like infinite dynamite on him. That was a very, very nice moments with Pedro there. But anyway, so Zoro is paying respects to Pedro and Yasu. Otoko shows up with some sake and pours it. And then you also have Hiyori that is there, right? And Hiyori shows up and sits down and also prays to Yasu's grave. And they talk a little bit there. And she says like, oh, okay, I guess you're leaving now, since you're at the grave. That means you guys are going to be leaving Wano soon. And Zoro's just drinking the sake, and he's like, yeah, that's pretty much it. And then Zoro's swords are lying next to him, and so Hiyori sees Enma, and she's like, well, I guess I'm going to have to say goodbye to my father's sword. And then Zoro, there's this awkward moment of silence where Zoro is like, he's like, hey, Zoro, you could say anything in this situation, right? And just like, he's like, I'll be back someday, Hiyori, or something like that. No, Zoro just looks at the sword and just looks back at Hiyori and is just like, you can't have it back. I'm keeping this. This is mine now, Hiyori. And Hiyori just immediately starts laughing, and she's like, oh, of course. That's what I was talking about. Once again, firing, like holding road flares in front of Zoro's face. And Zoro's like, hey, I'm not giving you back this sword. This is a good sword. I'm keeping this. You took my Shusui, and now I have this thing, And this is like playing like, okay, a game where you have like the romance options, and it's like the first 4 options on the prompt are like to continue the relationship with Hiyori, and Zoro selects the option to talk about Kaido. Just like, because Zoro goes on to be like, by the way, when I was slashing up Kaido with this sword, he said something. He said it reminded him of Odin. And Hiyori was like, yeah, I guess he sensed the spirit of my father. Yep. I'm gonna get even stronger with this blade. And then Hiyori is like, it seems like Enma, he seems like happy that it found itself with you, like you're the right person to have the blade sort of thing, right? And so they stick with like the storyline elements, right? It's just like, Zoro, there were so many other options to choose from, Like he could have said, are you going to be sad that I'm leaving? Or he could have said, I think I can return someday. And it's like, like all this stuff that he could have brought up. And then Hiyori's just like, oh, let's talk about Kaido and my dad. It's like, okay, yeah, I guess we can. Okay, bye, Zoro. And Zoro's like, yep. It's like, hey, Zoro's dedicated, ladies and gentlemen. He's dedicated. He cares about sake, and he cares about his swords. Yeah, that's how it goes for Zoro. So, yeah, if anybody in the entire story, it would be either Tashigi or Hiyori that, like, at the end in some sort of epilogue, if anybody was, like, if Oda was going to do that, like, show some characters together, that would probably be the way he would do it. Dude, I even remember, back when Robin first joined the crew, right, and she was, like, kind of callous toward everybody. I mean, not super callous, but like she didn't really call anybody by their real names except for Luffy. You know, actually, I was rewatching Skypiea the other day, and it's so weird listening to Robin say like, oh, instead of Nami or Usopp, she'll say Miss Navigator or Longnose or something like, or the cook. You know, it's so weird hearing Robin. Like, that is such a clever way that Oda did that, like establishing how she doesn't really get like close to anybody emotionally, and then the whole thing after Enies Lobby, she now starts calling everybody by their real names, and that's such a nice little touch there. But anyway, remember when she first joined, there were a few of them. Like, there was like a running gag of like the Straw Hats that don't trust Robin. Like, Luffy did immediately because he's Luffy. Robin's like, hey, you killed my old boss. You didn't kill Crocodile, but you took out my old boss, so I guess you have to, you know, accept me on your crew now. And Luffy's like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. He's like, yeah, I'm homeless, so you got to accept me. And he's like, okay, yeah, sure, why not, right? And then there was also, like, Usopp that was, like, interrogating her and everything like that, and there was a lot of people that didn't trust her. Obviously, Sanji, you know, was immediately like, oh, yeah, of course, Robin on our crew, absolutely. Nami did not trust her at first, but then eventually was like, oh, hey, look at all this, like, look at this treasure I got, you know, from Baroque Works and Crocodile. And she's like, I love you, sister, this is great. So she's happy. And the only one that was still, like, seriously like, I don't trust you yet was Zoro. And there was actually, at the time, this was a long time ago back, you know, this was post-Alabasta, but there was some time way back in the day where it was like, oh, Zoro and Robin together. I mean, not as great as Robin and Frankie, obviously, but still, Robin and Zoro, you can kind of see them as a couple, you know, very serious individuals on the Straw Hats and everything like that. You know, but of course, even Zoro would eventually learn to, like, trust Robin and then help save her during Enies Lobby and everything like that. So there's a little moment like that, you know, maybe. But yeah, anyway, that's the video. Hope you all enjoyed talking about who's gonna maybe be Zoro's wife by the end of the story. The serious, hard-hitting questions that we are here to discuss, damn it. Okay, hope you all enjoyed the video, everybody. New chapter coming out this week. Thanks for watching. Techig, signing out. Later.